So I'm glad to be back here with you guys, and grateful to Jason for doing such a great job while I was away. Did a fantastic job, right? I mean, for the last 2 weeks, he's been talking about some of Paul's teaching to Titus, right? Who was a minister on the island of Crete, and it's interesting. We might think, oh, how relevant is the Bible today? Well, still, and I'm not saying that the Bible is the place where this term was coined, but when somebody is of sort of despicable character, one of the words that can be assigned to them is the word Cretan, right? You've heard somebody call somebody a Cretan? It's because of this time period and this group of people on that island, And Paul even talks about that, right? Jason brought that up. The people, even your own scholars have said, these people are always like this. And it was because of their, their worship. Really, they came by kind of naturally because they worshiped Zeus. And Zeus was kind of a despicable character himself. Sorry to anybody that worships Zeus. No, not sorry. Sorry. Not sorry. But of course, Zeus was, they believe Zeus was a man who became a god. And we are today not going to have to face the same kind of challenges that Paul had to face with Titus, and kind of helping him through how to help those folks adjust. Because if you know anything about what Jesus said about himself, he never said that he was only a man. And one of the things that we know about him was that when he took on flesh and came and lived for the time period that he was here, a little over 3 decades on earth, he was fully man, but still fully God. And the God part of him was not the new thing. John even writes about him in the first chapter, saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He has always been. And so, while Jason had sort of, and Paul, of course, for Titus, had this burden of kind of walking people through this start and stop and how to communicate with people on the basis of the fallacy of worshiping a God that was once a man, and it sort of worked his way into that position. Today I get to share with you one of the most important teachings that Jesus left for us. The man who had always been fully God and was here with us just for a while in the flesh. Now, the teaching that I want to share with you comes from Luke chapter 9, verse 23. I'm going to read it out of the New International Version. And this is what Jesus has to say here. Then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. This is what showing and growing in our love for God looks like when it gets lived out in a practical way. Jason's talked about resolutions, some things to start, some things to stop. I can't think of a better way to sort of put a cap on the end of that fantastic couple of messages by just sharing what I feel like is the ultimate resolution that anyone can make. And that's the resolution to take up your cross. The interesting thing is, if we read to the end of Luke chapter 9, Jesus gives 3 examples of people that say they want to do this. That say, I want to be your disciple, I want to follow you. But I think it's there as a lesson for us because none of those folks really seem to possess the resolve to actually follow through with what their words say. Now, I'm going to start out by saying this. what we're talking about today, and a lot of the teachings in the Bible are not easy, they're hard. It doesn't mean they're not accessible to us, but they're not easy. Does that make sense? And so before we get going, when we talk about these folks, what I want you to understand is every single one of the people that didn't follow through did so not because they were unable to, but because they chose that path. All right? They made the choice. I think that's important to kind of clarify as we get started. The things that keep them from following are really the same kinds of things that still keep people from following today. And so we have to recognize them for what they are, choices. A lot of times we take choices and we make them impossible obstacles. And we say, I can't, when really what we're saying is, I won't, or I don't want to. All right. So the first person that we meet in Luke 9 that says this to Jesus is in verse 57. I'll get there. As they were walking along the road, a man said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. Now that sounds like a pretty bold, inclusive, decisive statement, doesn't it? I will follow you wherever you go. Now, the interesting thing about this is in that time period, when somebody said they wanted to be a disciple, a follower, especially in Judaism, which let's not forget that Jesus was a Jew, okay? I feel like I need to say that sometimes because I think sometimes we forget. He didn't come as Messiah, walk around with the Jewish people and not practice the faith that he established himself with the people that he established as his own. The only thing is he came to complete that which he started. Because Judaism is basically what our God established to demonstrate the need for him. The law and all the blood sacrifices and rituals that were required within the Jewish faith were there to show people that they needed something beyond themselves. It was to demonstrate we can't do this ourselves. The best we can do is sort of push it off, push it back. And everybody knows what it's like when you have a problem and the only thing you could do is sort of delay it for a while, defer the problem. I told you a few minutes ago, kind of before we started recording, that I'd lost some things, some appliances and some other things. One of the things that we've lost is a toilet, okay? Man, there's technology you've never been unthankful for, okay? When it first happened, this was actually, we had the first inkling of problems actually a year ago about this time. It was really cold, so the water in the back of the tank was really cold. It happened to be late at night, and I sometimes have trouble sleeping, so I'm sitting in bed, and I think I'm kind of clicking through maybe channels, and I hear this tink, and I thought, what's that? And then I hear water, and I'm like, I don't know what that was, but I don't like what I'm hearing now. And our toilet tank had cracked, like basically kind of exploded, like from the tank bolt that attaches it to the bowl all the way up to the top. Punk! You ever seen a windshield crack in the sun? Just pop, just like that. It had to have been how it happened. And so I went to try to find a new tank, and of course, it's a old contractor grade piece of equipment, so you can't just put a tank on a bowl. It's not going to happen. So I did what any good preacher does. I drained it completely, went out and bought some Flex Seal and just sprayed the snot out of that tank. And and it held for a year. But it ain't holding anymore. So, all I can say is, I got some work to do. Um, sorry. I don't even know where I was going with that story now. Because it hurt my heart too much to tell you about my toilet. So, deferred pain. Deferred pain. So this fella that is talking to Jesus says, I will follow you wherever you go. It sounds like a solid commitment, okay? But the thing about a commitment is when you are following a rabbi, people understood there's going to be not deferred pain, but there's going to be some immediate consequences to what you're going to do, okay? It's not just about I'm going to take care of this and then everything will be all right in my life. When you said I want to be a disciple, you walked up to the rabbi at the time, okay, and you said I want to be your disciple, and he would start asking you questions from the law, the Torah. And he didn't ask you a couple of questions. He asked you lots of questions. And he didn't just ask you questions from the Torah. He asked you questions based on how he taught it. And you had to answer them correctly. See, if you hadn't gone through the rabbinical school all the way, you weren't going to pass muster for any of these guys. And it was such a following was such a lifelong commitment that one of the phrases that people would say as a kind of a salutation or a blessing on somebody is, may you be covered with the dust of your rabbi. And what that means is, may you be following, if you are chosen to be a disciple, may you be following so close that whatever he's kicking up gets all over you. I'm broken because I know that toilet story doesn't have anything to do with where I'm going right now. But it did a minute ago, and I'm just going to admit it. And I'm going to move on, because if I walk around the barn anymore, it's just not going to work. And now, I've said the word toilet 9 times in a sermon, so just sad. I might have Michael edit that part out. I don't know. No, I'm not going to do that. Just being real. Okay. So when this guy says, I'll follow you wherever, what I'm trying to get at with the wherever is that he wasn't wondering about, he shouldn't have been wondering about what that meant. Will I have to get up and go with you tomorrow, though? He wasn't wondering about that. When you said you wanted to be a disciple, it was this sort of understood thing. This was going to be a big commitment. So, I'll follow you without reservation is really what he's saying. But Jesus had this ability to see beyond words. And so, this is what he says to him in the very next verse. In Luke 9:58, Jesus replied, well, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Jesus draws attention to the fact that while we can't see it in his words, what Jesus must have known, because he saw into his heart, was that this guy just kind of loved comfort more than he was going to love following Jesus. He basically says, look, you got to understand, if you're going to follow me, I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight. We're going to go till we get there, and then I'm confident somebody's going to welcome us in, or we're going to stay out under the stars. Well, where's the food coming from? We'll see when we get there. Well, how are you going to take care of this? Well, we'll see when we get there. Now, was Jesus random? No. But one thing that you didn't have in immediacy when you followed Jesus was the security of knowing this is going to happen tonight, and then that's going to happen tomorrow. There was pretty much no comfort. Now, I got to say, thankfully, that is not really the case today with many people who follow him. I'm just going to bring the toilet right back into the story, okay? Because when I get it fixed, I'm going to have it. And like I said earlier, that was technology that you've never not been thankful for, right? There's personal comfort that you're glad that you have, right? That we don't still have outhouses. It was cold this morning. Okay? I had grandparents that told me stories of like going to the outhouse in the middle of the night. No, thank you. Really. I mean, I'm sure if you had to do that, that's what you had to do. But given the choice, I'm grateful that there is indoor plumbing. I'm grateful that I have a refrigerator. And my food doesn't go bad. Right? I'm grateful that when we came in this morning, we had the ability to make it warmer or cooler in here, depending on, kind of what we sort of liked. It's not like we're devoid of comfort. People that follow Christ are not devoid of comfort. However, I think that maybe comfort is offered to us in such an expansive way now that maybe we've sort of forgotten how really comfortable we can be. Because it seems like we always want a little bit more, right? I mean, what I'm saying is maybe the obstacle of comfort is the very thing that's hindering you from really following him right now. But it doesn't involve having to wonder where you're going to sleep tonight. See, because when the call of Jesus to take up our cross hits us, inevitably, in some way, though it may not mean that we're going to have to give up our bed, in some way it's going to come into conflict with the ultimate goal of comfort. And I mean, honestly, our society places a pretty high value on comfort today, don't they? I mean, really. Of all the places that we could live in the entire world, we really place a pretty high value on comfort. As a matter of fact, it is a giant money-making business right now. Case in point, how many different delivered-to-your-door mattress commercials have you seen this week? And I mean, you talk about convenient, it's delivered to your door in a little tiny roll, right? And one or two people can pick it up, and you put it on the platform, and it shows you, and then you open it up, and it slowly kind of expands to its right shape, and then you have your mattress right there, And that's not just one place. Good grief. Casper. What are the other ones? Purple, yeah, the one that we have on our bed. I mean, there's tons of those things. And when you see the commercials, what do they usually have on them now? What's popular now? Tiny, fuzzy animals falling asleep on their mattresses. Like if you have a baby goat, I guarantee you, that goat is going to sleep well on a Casper mattress because it shows it right there on TV. But we don't just have comfort fed to us in the mattress world, do we? I mean, we got that. But we have like recliners for our living rooms and 17-way adjustable seats in our cars, and not only memory foam for our bed, but literally in our shoes now, right? Even in sandals. You want the flip-flops with the memory foam? Like, that's like an oxymoron, isn't it? You got fuzzy socks, right, ladies? Come on. Fuzzy socks. I am definitely, besides the Carolina dog, I'm the only dude in my house. There are a lot of fuzzy socks at my house. A lot of fuzzy socks. Lots. Massage chairs. The list just goes on and on and on and on. But there's this sort of danger in loving comfort too much. It seems as we've continued to sort of emphasize more and more this idea of being comfortable, it's become sort of the standard that we use to make more and more of our important decisions. I'm going to back up and say that again. As this sort of emphasis on comfort has become more and more important to us, it seems like that has become more and more the standard by which we begin to make a lot of our decisions, including decisions about faith and following Christ. And someone has made the decision to do that, or like Jason said in the last couple of weeks, the declaration of discipleship that he's been talking about. Anybody that sort of made that declaration has higher priorities than simply asking, how can I make this comfortable? I'll follow you, but I really don't want to go outside. You know, and if we're asking that question, we really need to follow it up with a question that has a lot more kind of awkwardness to it. You know, it's kind of like we have to ask ourselves, if I'm that concerned with how I can bring sort of my comfort into this idea of discipleship, am I really ultimately following Jesus, or am I kind of ultimately following comfort? Am I ultimately, like, who sits higher in the order? Is really following Jesus the ultimate goal, or is like, I follow Jesus, but man, I want to be comfortable? As soon as we say that, we kind of have betrayed that we've elevated comfort up higher, into that higher point in our life. It's easy to make comfort our God. That's what I'm saying. To make it what we live for, what we work for, what we sacrifice for. But that's not really the choice we need to make if we're resolved to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow Jesus. So as you determine the connection you have with Jesus, I'll ask you this question. And it's a question that I'm asking myself too. I mean, inevitably, when you lose a washer and a dryer and a toilet and some other stuff, all in one compact area, it helps you to sort of see these things sort of laid out in front of you, And when they come back and you're like, wow, I'm really glad that's back. And you think, but what would happen if I couldn't have that? The question that we all have to ask ourselves is our connection one of commitment, or is it one of convenience? When we think about where we're at with Christ himself, is the connection about commitment, or is it really, I'll stay connected as long as it works for me? And in our day and age and in our society, like we've said, really that works for me, it has a lot to do with how comfortable I am, right? How convenient this connection is. That man back in verse 57, he spoke words of commitment, but when Jesus painted him a picture of what commitment looked like, kind of in specificity, he seemed to sort of back off. And I think this is pretty common today too. I think there's a lot of people who have made a decision to believe in Jesus, but have never really committed to him. The old kind of illustration and the idea that I've heard associated with this, and it's something that Kyle Idleman talked about in his sermon series in his book called Not a Fan. Came out many years ago. He cited this story about a new group called Flexitarians. Now, it just happens that term came to be in around 2009, 2010. In 2019 or 2018, it was voted as one of the most important words in our vocabulary. Flexitarian. And basically, flexitarian is a person who eats vegetables and fruits and things and doesn't eat meat most of the time, unless they really want to. And the interview was so funny because it was sort of like, well, I really am committed, this gal saying, I really am committed to this idea of eating clean and eating the right kind of vegetables, but I like bacon, which I could say a hearty amen to. Now, I'm not trying to get on the flexitarians, obviously, but I think it's interesting. It's the ultimate way that we're kind of working our society out right now. We say things, and there are these deep words of commitment, sort of like on the surface, and we sort of throw those at the wall to see if they stick. But the heart behind it is sometimes different. And the way it sort of plays out in faith circles and in situations is, okay, I'll follow Jesus, but I don't know if I like this thing that he taught. I don't know if I like this thing that the Bible says. Like, I want to follow Jesus, but I'm not going to forgive that person that hurt me. And listen, I understand what it feels like to be hurt. Really. So I'm not saying that it's not a painful experience. And I will gladly say to you that it's quite possible that the kind of hurt that you've experienced is not the kind of hurt that I've experienced. So in that way, I may not be able to relate that way to you. But this book that talks about forgiving was written by a God that came for the sole purpose of being the sacrifice that we could not be. The reality of Judaism is that all those sacrifices, like we said, it pushed back sin, but it couldn't cover it. It couldn't pay the penalty. It couldn't make it go away. It could defer the penalty. But Jesus came and took the penalty. And his whole purpose in coming. You know, we just celebrated the birth of Christ, and so we're awfully fond this time of year to talk about, 8-pound, 7-ounce baby Jesus. Right? But the reality is, Jesus wasn't baby Jesus up in heaven till he came to earth. Like baby Yoda, It's really powerful, but sort of, still kind of cute and harmless he was God. John goes on to say in chapter 1 of his gospel, by him everything was created and nothing that was created without him, basically. Like he somehow, as the creative word was being spoken that made everything, that word was Jesus. He's always been God and always been powerful. And so he knew what he was doing when he came. He made the decision of his own volition to come here and pay the price for sin. But he was betrayed by not one close friend, but by several close friends, honestly. We talk about Judas, but Peter denied him too. And every one of the disciples, save maybe John, ran away and hid during the crucifixion. He was completely abandoned. The chief priests, we talk about that, and that's a title that was given to them that it's convenient for us if we're like Sunday school people and we've been to church and we know that the scribes and the Pharisees, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, the high priest was the one who was supposed to be speaking the words of God to the people, leading them faithfully. And the high priest and the one who was kind of behind the current high priest pulling the strings, which was another guy who'd been high priest for a long time in the same family, were the ones who wanted him dead. So the God of the universe who put in place the idea of having a high priest who would, on behalf of the people, offer the one national kind of blood atonement, sprinkling the blood on the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies in the hopes of pushing back the sin of the nation for a little while longer. That man who should have understood the need for a Savior to completely take away and atone for sin, that man was the man who said, kill him. And that Jesus is the one that says we should forgive. Gang, it doesn't matter if I know what you feel or not. Jesus knows. He understands. The God who made you understands why you hurt. And he's saying, don't selectively weed out forgiveness. When you follow me, you forgive. I'll give you the strength to do it, and I'll walk you through it. Sometimes you say, I want to follow. Don't talk to me about giving a percentage of my money, though. I work hard for that. I won't go into that like I went into forgiveness. I can just tell you that I understand that we live in a day and age where there's a bunch of people that do my job and live in big houses and really strike me as being kind of scam artists. And it kind of drives me crazy, believe me, because it makes my job a lot harder, frankly, because I walk into a lot of relationships on the one down. I get my hair cut, having a good conversation with somebody cutting my hair, and they ask me what I do, and I know, well, here it goes. Well, I'm a pastor. I started a church. And either they're going to talk to me more or they're going to get real quiet and they're just going to cut my hair and send me away. And if they get real quiet, or if they engage me and say, well, I don't go to church anymore, the number one reason they don't go to church is because they probably got hurt at church. And I hate that. I hate it that I've probably hurt people. But I really hate it that some people were hurt because they were basically only counted valuable because they gave money, which is like the lowest common denominator of value. And that's not to say that giving isn't important. That's just an adulterated, mutated view on giving. See, we don't give because it helps me to have the private jet. I mean, you've seen my vehicle, right? And it's like, I love it. I can put a lot of stuff in it. It is 2005, but I love it. And I'm grateful that I have it. But the reality is, I'm not secretly housing 5 sports cars someplace, okay? Or if you know me, a series of heritage restored SUVs. The thing is, I know that giving is a challenge. I know it is. But that's precisely why Jesus loves when we do it. Because it's an act of worship. He loves the heart of the person that says, I'm going to contribute this too. Because he knows that you work hard for your money, and he knows that it means something to you. And when you choose to give some of it to him, it means something. It's an offering. It really is. And a lot of times it's sacrificial. But when we pick and choose to say, I don't think that is necessary, ultimately we're robbing ourselves of the possibility of experiencing that joy and understanding what it looks like and feels like when you're participating that way. And it's a pretty cool thing. Some people say, hey, while we're at it, don't ask me about giving my time either. And that's a big one today because everybody's busy. I get that. We've talked about that. When you ask somebody, how are you doing? It used to be, I'm okay, I'm pretty good. I mean, people still say that, but more than anything, what's the response people say? Oh, I'm busy. Yeah, because it's almost like saying, I'm valuable. It's okay, I'm contributing. I mean something. I'm just letting you know I'm busy, so it must mean that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to be a productive member of society. I get time is a valuable commodity. It's every bit as valuable as the cash that we just were talking about. I get it. Another reason why our God is saying, I want that from you. I mean, honestly, it's the idea of connection and relationship, right? If we tell somebody, I'm committed to you, I love you, but I'm only probably going to see you every once in a while. Okay, well, why? Well, because, I'm busy. Let me just give you a heads up on if you're in a relationship and that's the way you're treating it, and you're having problems, you don't have to come to me and ask what's going on. If you're having problems and you look back and you hear that vernacular and you're telling somebody, I care about you deeply, it's just that I'm too busy for you. I almost guarantee you that you're going to have problems, right? It's the same way with our God, because we communicate love through time, just like we do in other ways. I'll follow Jesus, but don't talk to me about sex, because it's the 21st century. And believe me when I say I don't really want to talk to you about, I don't want to talk to you about sex, because it is the 21st century, and man, we are screwed up. We just are. Everything is okay now. Literally, there's nothing that's off the table. And we celebrate it. And people are getting hurt because of it. Trust me, if you're in my position and you're standing behind this music stand right now, and you're looking down your notes and you know that you wrote that, you're like, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that less than I didn't want to say it when we first planted this church in 2009. Because it's gone that much further. Listen, I get we live in a culture of permissiveness. And it's easy to look at that, make your peace with it, and say that the Bible's outdated, but I'm going to just beg to differ with you on that. And say that if that is something that you've chosen to embrace, and you're feeling distant in your connection to God, it could be that you've erected that wall. We spend a lot of time blaming God for stuff that maybe we've built up. It's sort of like the teachings of Scripture today are on a buffet. We go to the kind of the golden corral of church, and we pay this, the price of admission is I got to get up on Sunday, right? And I don't play golf or I don't go to brunch. And I come in and we sort of would like it where we could just kind of take what looks good and not worry about the rest. Never have liked lima beans, so I'm going to leave those there. I have no idea what hominy is, so I'm not going to try that. It's kind of funny. My father-in-law loves the buffet line. He loves the Golden Corral, the Ryan Steakhouse kind of place. And honestly, I think if that man could just eat tapioca pudding all the time, he would. He loves tapioca pudding. Just loves it. And I mean, I'm a fan. I like tapioca pudding. I can get behind that. But see, the thing is, he knows he can't sustain himself on tapioca pudding, right? Not for a long time, at least. And that's the reason why the Bible and the teachings of Christ and the teachings that are there, they're not in this optional check your box and we'll customize a religion just for you. Because we can't truly sustain ourselves with just the stuff that we might like. Just can't do it. Our souls can't be sustained. Our spirits, our greater sense of purpose can't be sustained on that stuff. And it might feel good for a little while, but it still leaves us sort of empty. It's almost no different than kind of that new car buying feeling. And maybe that's just me. Like when you get like a new car, it doesn't matter if it's brand new to me or not. And you're like, ooh, this is so great. I love this. But after a while, it just becomes a thing that you drive to get back and forth, right? I mean, it's just any car simply becomes a vehicle after a while. When we pick and choose things and we kind of customize our discipleship, we create a Christianity that is going to get stale and is going to leave us empty because we're not taking advantage of all the stuff. Because the stuff that we might not like or that might be a little harder, it's not harder because he's vindictive. It's harder because it all works together to give us this thing that he talks about in John 10:10 when he says, I've come so that you may have life to the full. See, one of the most dangerous ways to live is with a little bit of Jesus. Because a little bit of Jesus is like an inoculation. It can make you immune to the real thing. Like marriage, it doesn't work if you don't have this committed whatever it takes approach. Now we meet the second person that Jesus talks to in Luke chapter 9. We're going to meet second and third pretty quick. 59 and 60. He said to another man, follow me, but he replied, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. And to that, a lot of us would go, what? I mean, the guy starts out almost by immediately saying, first. All right, so the first thing he does is he puts Jesus off, right? Hey, why don't you do this? Well, I want to follow, I really do. Not right now. Now's not a good time. Maybe you hear this guy's excuse, and you're thinking, well, it's not really an excuse. He wants to go bury his father. Let the guy go have a funeral, right? Well, here's the thing. That's not exactly what this means. When we look into what this language means, what he's saying is, I want to do this, but I want to do it later. This guy's dad isn't dead, nor is he sick. Nor is he calling him up on the weekends and saying, I haven't seen you in such a long time. I might die tomorrow. You never come. You never visit me. I could be dead. Maybe he's doing that. I don't know. Probably not calling him. But the reality is the guy is saying, I want to follow you, but I have this life. Now, maybe when my parents are gone, then I'll follow you. When I get that inheritance, when I know that they won't disapprove, then I'll follow you. That's the reason why Jesus answers the way he does. So, I think it's fair for us to ask, it's probably important for us to ask, am I telling Jesus, first let me do what I want to do? Let me take care of this. Sometimes we try to put Jesus off like we put off eating right or saving money. You know, it's like, I'll start tomorrow. This is the last time. When I'm out of college, I'll do. When I get married, when we have kids, boy, we are going to get back to, when I have a less demanding job, I'm not sure what's holding you back. Might be something that seems very legitimate. But hear me out. Jesus says the time is now. This is now. One thing I can tell you for certain is that the longer you put him off, the less likely you are to ever follow him. Because spiritually speaking, the idea of out of sight, out of mind is paramount. The longer we try to legitimize not doing this thing, the more it is going to just become what we do. And that leads us to the third person that Jesus talks to. This is in Luke 9, all the way at verse 61. Still another said, I'll follow you, Lord. But first, let me go back and say goodbye to my family. Again, seems like a pretty legitimate request. Jesus replied, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. So the hand to the plow thing, we've talked about this before, but, not being in a terribly agrarian nation anymore. I'm not sure how many of you guys have plowed a field. I figured there would be about somewhere between 1 and 5 people that would raise their hand. Okay, I'll probably go up when I ask this. How many people have used a rototiller? Okay, bigger. How many people have mowed the grass? There we go. We're in Houston, right? Still mowing the grass. It's 34 degrees out. Probably have to mow the grass next week. Whether you're plowing or you're rototilling a garden or you are mowing, but you're mowing a long track, okay? What happens to your rows if you are mowing, whether you're pushing the mower or you are on a riding mower, and something gets your attention back here to the point where you turn around? How do your rows look? Now, let's just imagine that, I'll pick on us as kids, okay? I want to pick on kids. I'll pick on us as kids. What would your parents, mom or dad, have said to you if they would have put you on the riding mower and said, okay, go mow the backyard? And the backyard is big. It's got, you got a riding mower, so it's got to be fairly good size. And you spend the entire time looking around. Not for one row, but for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3/4 of the yard is spent with you basically going, now, I'm not saying that ever happened to a junior high boy. Just speculation completely. What happens to the rows? Right? When I first started working at the camp where my father-in-law was the manager, and I got out to mow the big field that contains the 2 ball fields. He said, I know you haven't mowed a giant field like this probably ever in your life. I said, you're right. I mean, I've mowed a lot, but I've never mowed more than maybe 75 yards in a straight line. And this is like 200 yards in a straight line. And he said, here's what you do. See the gym over there, the big building, the outbuilding? He said, put yourself on the tractor, pick a point, and just drive at that point. Don't look in front of you. Don't worry about lining your wheels up, that kind of stuff. That's short-term mowing stuff. Pick a point, drive at that. When you get to the end and you spin around, you're getting ready to start your next row, pick a point on the farmhouse over there. Drive at that. And just keep doing that back and forth. Said your rows will be straight as an arrow. They'll be fine. Just don't look down. And, and of course, whatever you do, don't start looking behind you. Like, don't look to admire your work. Okay? Don't test my instructions before you get to the end of the row. Jesus isn't looking for half-hearted followers here, gang. That's, following him part-time isn't an option. He has no interest in Sunday Christians who try to follow him but aren't looking for that everyday commitment. People that are always kind of looking over their shoulder, wondering if they're missing out on something. When this guy says, hey, I need to go back and say goodbye to my family, He's not saying, I need to say goodbye to my family. What he's saying is, I want to go back and make sure that maybe there isn't something better. Behavior like that virtually guarantees you're not going to stay on a straight path. Both the second and third guys that talk to Jesus, they're dealing with the issue of priority. So let's ask one more question to help define the connection that we have with Jesus. Is Jesus one of many, or is he your one and only? Is Jesus one of many, or is he your one and only? Gang, too many half-hearted believers want to make Jesus one of many, and Jesus is clear that that's not an option. He says, the most important command is to love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. That's the kind of connection he wants to have with you. He doesn't want once a week affection. He wants your whole heart. He explains that following him is not something we can choose to do halfway. It's kind of an all or nothing thing. When we decide to become a follower of Christ, he wants to be your one and only. He isn't just talking about salvation. It's about sacrifice and priority. Biblically, there just isn't an option there for selective commitment. It's not just about living for the someday, for heaven. That's what I'm saying. Christianity isn't just about living for what happens at the end of this life. It's about loving God from this day forward and showing him your devotion and allowing him to lead you where he wants you to go. Gang, please understand, as I say all that, like I said in the very beginning, I know this is hard. C3 is a hospital for sinners, okay? We're damaged, all of us. Damaged, we're screwed up, we're imperfect. We are repeat offenders, and we all need the ongoing healing that comes from Jesus. You don't have to get yourself together before you come to Jesus. And you certainly don't have to get yourself together before you come here, because nobody can do that. None of us can do that. He invites everybody to come as you are. But he doesn't want us to stay that way because it hurts us. It hurts us. Too many of us live these half lives of following sort of Christ. And we don't understand why we always feel a little defeated. If you're living with some customized version of Christianity, you're hurting yourself. You're limiting your connection with him because you're unresolved. Basically, you're saying, I don't know if I really want to follow you, which implies I don't really want the healing that you're offering. I don't want the peace, not in perpetuity. I don't want all that hope. So maybe today you've been listening and you're thinking, this makes sense. I want to follow. But where does it start? Well, it starts with surrender. See, all this talk about living for him, it's not what saves us. We can live for him only because he died for us. And that's not about what saves us or keeps us saved. That idea of, I want to do my best for him, that's not the thing that saves us. It's not the thing that keeps us saved. Surrender is about accepting the thing that does. That is God's grace. The only thing that can save us is the grace of God. The invitation here, guys, it has not changed. Jesus still says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And that means let her deny herself, take up her cross, and follow me just as much. But you know, my favorite word in that invitation is anyone. If anyone would follow after me. No matter what your story is, no matter what you think you've done, this is the connection Jesus wants to have with you. Anyone who has ever laid awake in bed at night and thought, I would give anything to undo what I have done. Anyone who has looked at themselves in the mirror and just quietly said, I can't believe what I have become. Anyone can come as you are. Anyone can confess him as Lord. Anyone can be washed clean in baptism. Anyone means everyone. So that means me. It means you. Let's pray together.